Well, thanks everybody for showing up. I know this is one of the last sessions of the day, so I know this is one of those where we stand in between all of you and drinks. I hate doing that, but I would love it if you guys stick around and ask questions at the end, so I'd appreciate that. Obviously, we're here to help inform you, and we've got a great panel here to talk to us about data. So I know throughout this conference, I feel like we've been hearing a lot about AI. I feel like that's like the focal point of pretty much every session that we've had so far. Obviously, underlying all of that AI, you can't have any of it without the data, right? So I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves in a second, and they'll talk us through how they use data to optimize performance and make better investment strategies. So I also want to start with a little icebreaker. I didn't warn you guys about this.
Surprise icebreaker.
Yeah. So as we do introductions, and by the way, my name is Josh Glastein. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Berkshire Residential Investments. I've been with them for 6 years. We are an owner-operator. We have about 27 billion assets under management, about 120 properties across the U.S., and around 37,000 units. All right, so the icebreaker is, I don't know if any of you remember the show Heroes. Do any of you remember that? Anyway, I'm kind of a nerd, so. And we have the eclipse coming up next Monday. For those of you who don't know, it's a big solar eclipse, doesn't happen often. And in Heroes, when the eclipse happened, that's when everybody got their superpowers. So I want to know, when you introduce yourself, also, what is your superpower that you would choose to have?
That I would want to have.
That you would want to have. Not the one that you currently have. I'm sure you have many.
All right. Hey, I like it. I'm Max Stewart. I'm the industry principal at Pereview Software. We are a data aggregate software solution for debt and equity real estate owners. We pull together multiple pieces of information, third-party, internal, Excel, accounting systems, and put them together into customizable dashboards and reports for our clients. And previous to that, I actually worked on the real estate side. I was at Bentall Kennedy, not Bentall Green Oak, JLL, and Bridge Investment Group on the asset management side. So I sympathize and definitely understand there's a real need for technology solutions in the industry, and there's a lot of data and there's a lot that we need to do with it. So it's great to see events like this where there's a lot of service providers and a lot of people focused on real estate tech. And superpower-wise, let's see. I mean, the go-to is fly, but I mean, that just seems so nice. I'm going to go with that.
It's a good one. It used to be one of mine. I've since changed it.
Hi, Michael Caracciolo, Head of Asset Management for Ivanhoé Cambridge. Ivanhoé Cambridge, if you don't know, is a Canadian-based pension fund. We invest in all the main food groups, and about half the portfolio is in the U.S., and of that half, a huge part of it is right here in Manhattan. So very connected to the Quebec investors, but also the real estate that we own. My superpower, if I could have one, I guess it's the flash. I mean, to run around these tours, it would be a lot more efficient if I had that kind of superpower.
Nice. It's a good one. Thank you, Michael.
Hello, everyone. My name is Haley Donato. I am the head of asset management and finance at a company called Continental Realty. So we're an owner-operator based out of Baltimore, but most of our holdings are in the Southeast. So we own and operate about $4 billion of real estate across just two product types, so multifamily and retail, primarily shopping centers. So I'm going to go with this. I don't know if this is a clever one or not, but the different languages. I used it before I had children. I used to travel all the time. And so being able to speak sort of all languages, you could kind of...
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that, creative. I would go with mind reading. So I used to do flying, but I have since switched it to
What's your new one?
Mind reading. So
That could get scary though, right?
it can. There's like pros and cons to every superpower. I've decided also. So anyway, thank you very much. So let's start out by, you guys each work for different companies. Max, I know you're like on the vendor side, but I'll want to hear from you too. But I want to kind of know from each of your different perspectives, given that you have different company structures and things like that, how do you use data? Like, why do you need it? Why is it important to you? Kind of give us that broad overview of what you're looking at.
I'll go first. Okay. I mean, I don't really use data to make decisions. I just use my gut generally, and it hasn't proven me wrong. I'm really fortunate to be in an organization now that, given its size and scale of its real estate holdings, have really had to lean into data intelligence. The sheer volume of even what we own in the U.S. is impossible to manage if you just had spreadsheets and were using Argus models every day, and there's still a lot of that. But I've seen a lot of really interesting ways to manufacture information that is helpful in a split second, given that it's sitting on a really wealthy set of information. And as an LP, it's still at a high level. We're talking cash flows and insights and cap rates and rents. But as operators, and that was my past prior to Ivanhoé Cambridge, there's an amazing amount of information you can mine if you put it in the right place and know the questions to ask. So I'm hopeful for the future that we can really get valuable insights. And I know we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there's a lot there, and I think maybe a few people have really seen it from top to bottom. But I'm excited that the Ivanhoé has this infrastructure that allows us to synthesize cross asset classes, cross regions, through different market cycles and get some insights that would be near impossible to do with the size team that we have.
So, Michael and I have chatted a little offline, and we have pretty different, similar, I guess, titles on the business card, very different portfolios and sort of different angles, right? So what are you guys, 400 billion?
The entire pension fund is 400. Out of that, about 80 is real estate.
Okay, and so we're 4, okay, right? And so much, much smaller. We're on the GP side. And so we have sort of different granularity that we're looking for in our data and different types of decision making. We're really, sort of in the weeds, asset by asset, month by month, making different types of decisions across just a really focused 2 product types in just a handful of select markets. So again, we can get in the weeds a little bit, but a lot of sort of different focus points between what you might be looking for at a company of that size and scale on the LP side versus what we're doing, which is a bit more, again, boutique, I guess. And ultimately, to answer your question of what are we hoping to do if you zoom the lens out, our job is as sort of a boutique. We raise outside funds as well, right? So we are owner operators, and we're raising private equity funds and placing it into these specific vehicles, all, again, as I said, multifamily or retail, but sort of spanning the risk spectrum from opportunistic to core. And our job as sort of that boutique firm is to sort of beat the index, right? And so if you're just gonna compare it to how multifamily as an industry is doing or what Blackstone is doing and in their non-traded REIT, et cetera, our job for our investors is to be much more nuanced and much more thoughtful and much more hyper-focused on exactly what we do and in the markets that we do it. And a lot of the data that we use and ingest to make decisions in asset management, on the acquisition, on the divestment, and even sometimes on the financing side, kind of always comes back to that sort of really, really granular approach.
Well, I'm going to jump right in.
Please do.
Boutique it's. I get that you have the ability to get into the level of detail, but I think as looking forward, even as an LP investor, having insights into that level of data could be used in a number of different ways, even outside of the direct investment. I know other shops have approached this idea. And I think that's a challenge with the industry and just sharing information in the way to get the kind of source code of real estate into the investor's hands. Again, something I hope to see happen over the next few years. But you're right. I mean, you have better insight into what's going on and can triangulate, forecasts and thinking about where markets are going to go through cycles better than anybody else.
So yes and no, though, because the other side of the equation is we don't have, when you are a boutique and you're an owner operator and you're hyper focused, you also lose the visibility of scale, right? And so you have to supplement that with third party sources, and that comes with its own challenges as well. So it's while we have the visibility on the operations, and my asset management team is literally in real time looking in the same platform that our operating group runs in, we also have to supplement because we don't have the scale across maybe within a certain MSA and certainly within certain submarkets, but not across an entire region or across, obviously, the entire country. So you want to give us some of your data?
Sure, I'll talk after.
Well, that might be a good segue for Max. Max, your platform kind of does a lot of that data aggregation or showing multiple or market data and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as you can see, there's a lot of software providers out there. I think someone said earlier that the average property manager is logging into 10 to 15 systems a day, and with all of that information, in addition to Excel, there's a lot to comb through, right? You want to make sense of all the data that's out there, and I think, real estate as an investment class is definitely behind the 8 ball in terms of managing data. I mean, obviously the stereotypical back of the napkin deals were done for years, and so much is based in Excel, but ultimately taking all the data that we have, making sense of it, ideally aggregating it, having a system where not only asset management, but also transactions, portfolio management, everyone is involved and kind of knows that you can access this information is vital. The clients that come to us, they many times are on a variety of different systems, some of which they don't even know, right? And they just want to be able to pull data in and quickly look at it, whether it be for their senior team, their investors, but having access to this information really makes your day-to-day business more efficient and ultimately adds time to your day and for dispositions and other aspects of your day-to-day work as an asset manager. You can quickly tie together information if you have your ducks in a row, like we were talking about. If year 2 in an investment, you were looking to sell an asset, and then after an investment committee meeting, hey, we're looking to sell this thing in 2 weeks. What can we do? Great. We have to go and find everything, and it's in multiple pieces of information. Having that data in cohesive location just makes everything more efficient across the company.
I'd almost say that certainly size and scale has its benefits for investing in that kind of technology, but I'd say to a degree, let me know if you disagree. Those are like table stakes now to run asset management, and thankfully there are technology platforms out there that make it achievable, but you can't run an entire business in real estate and be competitive by being completely offline and reading reports and using Excel, and I know that a lot of us do, but I think to even stay competitive and not even have an edge, you really need to lean into those platforms, because a lot of the stuff is table stakes, like common commodity information that you really need to get fast so you can really see where you want to press into.
I think too, one of the things that sometimes can get lost in the bigger, more conceptual elements of it is you have to, as an organization, so if you're a very large company, you might have many third-party operating partners. That's sort of one of the reasons I think that real estate has been a little slower to the efficiency game than some other investment classes, because the nature of there's capital allocators and there's local operators, and that sort of often creates dissimilar sort of reporting metrics, charts of accounts, whatever that might be. That creates quite a bit of friction in our business, right? I don't have to live with that as much as an owner operator, but I think it has sort of plagued our business, and in part why softwares like yours exist. But I think whether you're coming at it from that angle or you have sort of the luxury of being an owner-operator and your asset management folks and your investment folks have direct access to your own management company, you have to be really thoughtful, deliberate, and dedicate a tremendous amount of time to defining what you're trying to measure. I think so many people are starting just with the esoteric, we want to use it better, but you have to be exactly how does your organization measure, take for in multifamily, lease trade out? Okay, are you scrubbing out short-term leases? Are you, whatever, if you're measuring a renovation premium, are you netting it against organic rent growth and netting it against turnover costs? There's a million ways to skin the cat. I don't really care how your organization measures it or how mine does, but does senior management all the way down to your property operations team understand what the metrics are? And so the software solutions are only as good as the focus that the organization has given them, and those aren't the most sexy meetings, going in and trying to build out your definition of terms and metrics and measures and making sure that you have buy-in in terms of that is in fact how investment committee wants us to report on it, et cetera. And so I think that's some of the like in the weeds stuff that folks, if you don't have the right stakeholders involved, whether it's on the asset management side, on the portfolio management side, et cetera, or the enough decision-making power in that group when you're setting it up, people can just stall out. And you can layer on as many technologies as you want, and you're not gonna get to the end result that you want, which is faster decision-making.
So you're kind of alluding to a little bit of this, Haley, and Mike, you mentioned before about asking the data specific questions. How do you know what questions to ask the data, and how do you interact with the data to get those answers?
There's a 2-letter acronym that I won't say tonight, but that might come into play. Maybe taking a bigger step back, you're right. Like you need to nail down the fundamentals of real estate to make decisions on your investment, track where it's going. But if you take a step back and you think about all the different data touch points that you conceivably could have by running real estate, whether it's office or resi, industrial, it's impressively complicated. And I think very few have really thought about digging in that level and seeing what insights they can get, what efficiencies they could effectively make their building smarter in how the tenants use it and what you need out of it and how to really fine-tune it. Those are very difficult questions to ask and questions to answer. So I think what I found is there could be a great question and a data set to answer it, which is fine. I found the most value is really consolidating the data into one place, because you'll never, if you're trying to build something for the questions you know today, you're already going to fail. So you need to find all the places where you could conceivably get good structured information, put in one place, and then let the data scientists or the other technologies really interpret it the way that you need it.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it's all about being proactive, not reactive with everything, right? So if you want to use the data for whatever department, specifically questions that are coming up, you have to have, again, those ducks in a row. You have to have buy-in from everyone, right? You need to make sure that not only from an asset management perspective, as questions are coming up, you're able to answer those and know for certain that the data is clean. There's some checks and balances involved in terms of the data that's coming in. You've got a process in place that is governed, and you understand what's coming in, because a lot of times that, again, going back to Excel, we jokingly at Pereview refer to it as Excel hell. Jeff Wilson, who's our founder CEO, worked at Goldman Sachs Real Estate. I mean, but it's a reality, right? Like, so much in this industry is based on Excel. And you could fat finger and add a couple zeros, and then there's 10 different Excel files coming from 10 different operators, and then you don't even trust the data that's coming in. So ultimately, having some sort of process that includes some work, right? It includes some buy-in from different team members to define, okay, what's the data we want to see? How do we want to define it? That takes some time, but I mean, ultimately, it pays off.
I mean, just to add to that, and it kind of goes almost against what I just said before about finding the data and pulling it together. It's amazing how much this industry, especially on office, and I'm almost happy that there's so much disruption in office, because there's a ton of information that people haven't really been focusing on for a very long time. It's getting better, but you're absolutely right. Like, organizations run on Excel, Argus. It's very manual, and it's really not value add. Because what you're really trying to do is get the outcome of this effort to make decisions and get insights. Another great example is like knowing your tenants in office. Like, that is one of the most fundamental things you'd really want to know, but very few actually go and mine it in a way that's constructive. And I hope that folks in this conference will keep on developing software that's going to make it happen.
I think too, if you go back to your question of like what are you solving for? Like, what question are you answering? Like, the thing of asset management, or the way that I look at it, is like your group's job is to provide information from your own operating portfolio to help inform the deal teams on the acquisition side. Obviously, to manage and oversee the operational side to maximize, the properties that during their hold. we drive the divestment decisions at our firm. So what are we seeing in the data, and therefore presenting to investment committee of what should we be doing, what should we be exiting, why, what trends are we seeing, et cetera, right? So if you think about sort of those different, almost like customers of the asset management function, one thing that's been really interesting is like when you think about something that's a solution, like take the operating group, for example. We've found that sometimes the operating solution, some of the prop tech solutions that are solving for whatever they're solving for, fraud, or maybe it's an amenity or a widget on the wall that's gonna help, folks better serve the resident or whatever it might be. You wanna make sure you're looking at it from like multiple angles too, of like, we try really hard to information share across the firm so that, say, the widget that goes on the wall that's gonna be a selling feature for this Class A apartment deal, what data is that actual widget then producing, and how is that might be useful to us on the investment side? And so we're often circling back to the technologies that we're employing on the operating side of the business and saying, what data do they have that's useful that we might then funnel into, we do a lot of predictive analytics on the investment and divestment side, right? So like, what did that widget on the wall tell you about how your buildings are being used, and how is that different than other buildings might be used? I'm just using that as a hypothetical example, but like, I think you have to like really open your mind about like one problem that you're solving could have tons of applicable use cases just within your own enterprise.
So expanding on that, what technology or data-driven innovation have you experienced at your companies that has been really like this game changer for you, that has really impacted your competitive edge or your profit margin or whatever?
Are we giving away all the state secrets? So
Only what you're
we've done something really
sharing.
interesting where we're purchasing data directly from a payroll provider, and we use that as one of the major pillars in our rent projections and a multitude of other sort of predictive analytics that we're building internally. But a sort of spin on that, an interesting use case is that like that's not why we originally were interested in that data set. But if you go back 18 months when the labor markets were going bonkers and we were trying to figure out how to keep our property managers and maintenance techs and whatever in their seats, we actually kind of flipped that data set on its head, and Eugene, who's our data scientist who's here today, ended up building a little dashboard for our HR folks. And we were saying, hey, how quickly are we seeing these service types jobs in South Carolina? How quick are their quarterly bonuses changing, et cetera? Again, sort of having that broad, that the payroll data set is something that's been transformative for us on the investment, divestment, and predictive analytics, but we're also finding interesting ways that it's getting plugged into sort of more of the operating piece of the business as well.
I'll give you two, and these are more, I'm only at 6 months at Ivanhoé Cambridge, so I'm not responsible for any of this great work, but I can at least point out two really interesting projects that have been going on. One with one of our office operating partners and Ivanhoé have been working on a way to really address like the smart building approach, and it's really plugging into all the different data elements that come out of your building systems into one like middleware where you can use that to form some insights, drive innovation, drive maintenance, drive understanding of how space and systems are used. So hopefully next year we'll have really great insights of like, this is what it actually did. But I think, in today's market, there's very few owners that are spending a ton of capital in these types of like innovative investments. And I'm fortunate that we have a portfolio of office where we're making a step to be a little bit more intelligent and descriptive with how we think about data. So excited to see that. Another area that I hope that we can get into is, and really for everyone, is going back to tenants. It's really remarkable how binary the valuation is for office. It's like a percentage if they're gonna renew or not. And I think in today's world, it's a lot different. It's not just A or B, it's A, B, C, D, E, and different levels. So I think going forward, it's really getting the right data set and insights to perform better and more like crystallizing forecasts with support, rather than just guessing at a simple renewal probability.
Max, do you want to chime in from the client perspective and what they've been coming to you with and kind of like what they're looking for, whether Pereview is a solution for that or not?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a little biased here, but I would say that any client, it really comes down to, again, they want to know what they have, and it's it's impossible for, I'm sure a lot of you that have all these pieces of information and you want to be able to have access to it, and not only just to make sure that your team is on the same page, but ultimately with that time allowed, with these type of tech solutions, you're getting more hours in your day so you can actually start to add value. What we're starting to see a lot of is essentially trying to automate reporting more. So, these type of administrative, call it quarterly reports that people are constantly doing and take, business plans and going through this. I did it when I was an analyst. I was up till 11 o'clock and so-and-so's out of the office. They don't have that Excel file. And so those types of issues, a lot of our clients are just trying to get beyond. They realize that we need to get beyond this administrative type efforts and really try to focus our day-to-day on adding value to our properties. And in doing so, once you go through that process, which, there is, again, you need buy-in. You need buy-in from multiple groups in order to have an effective software solution. But once you do, there's a ton of opportunities that you will see, again, because you're spending your time looking at the nuance, maybe outliers at the property level, janitorial expenses are up, and you can start to really give a lot more detail in terms of tenant renewals. You're not just going to plug in the 70% renewal probability in Argus or whatever it may be, right? There's a lot more nuance there. You can start to dedicate time to your day to really thinking about, is this 20,000 square foot tenant actually going to renew? Let's really put some thought into this and not just throw a number out there and kind of run with it. But yeah, again, it takes some time and it takes some buy-in. That's really what it comes down to have a successful software solution, I think.
You mentioned one of your pain points was tenant engagement or satisfaction. Have you used data to really enhance the interaction with them and increase retention and improve that relationship with tenants?
Are you asking me or Mike?
I'm looking at all of you, but both of you. So.
Go ahead.
Yes, there's a lot of examples of that in multifamily and a lot of prop tech solutions that are out there that are sort of catering to the resident experience and feeding data back, I think, and we can talk about a lot of those. But I think an interesting thing in the retail space is that it's a business-to-business interaction, right? And so it's a very different element. And so we're actually looking for data to try and understand our tenants' performance in ways that they don't necessarily want us to understand, right? Because then we're going to push on their renewals, et cetera. So it's a very different relationship than on the multifamily side. And yes, we spend a tremendous amount of our time trying to deduce. In retail, the end-all be-all is tenant sales, because that dictates what rent they can pay, because it's a pure rent-to-sales ratio in terms of by category class, what they can afford. And so there's lots of really interesting data sets that we're continually pursuing, some of which I've seen here today, and some of which are less mainstream for commercial real estate, that we're kind of trying to sort of deduce. There's lots of things that can be seen as a proxy for sales. And so we go about it from the other standpoint of how are we going into our negotiation with our tenants more informed and sort of more armed with information.
Maybe I'll add to that, and it's kind of what I said before. There's a lot of information that is out there. I think many sectors should take guidance from residential, because there's a really interesting technologies and I'm going to say it, AI, that has been deployed to really make the tenant experience, the resident experience, a lot easier, at the same time driving efficiency with how you manage it. An asset, it's a different problem. It's a volume problem. There's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of units in portfolios, so you really have to lean into technology. Looking on an office side, I think that has been maybe, even during a disruptive process, a little bit less mainstream. But I think for the same principles, you want to understand your tenants, what they're doing, what they want at greater levels. Having the ability to kind of forecast where your customer base is going to be and that you're building the right product for them to buy is really fundamental to real estate.
So you've mentioned AI a bunch of times, which is great. Talk a little bit about predictive and prescriptive analytics. So I mean, to me, that's kind of a natural evolution of the usage of data beyond kind of reporting on what the current state is. How do you use it to really kind of understand what's going to happen or forecast what's going to happen in the future, whether that's with tenants or with your own asset performance or whatever it is? But I'm curious about what you kind of use the data for in that respect.
I'd say at this point, it's still a person making decisions on, looking at all these different factors and having a point of view of the future. I think today where it's really helped is just the manufacturing of and analyzing information to bring it to a point where you can synthesize it into something that is meaningful going forward. So no one, unless you found a technology, maybe you developed it, that can take all these things and pop out an answer, I'd love it. But the reality is that there's a lot of low-value work in pulling these pieces of information together. So, let's be realistic, badge swipes and tenant requests and building issues and lease terms, and you can synthesize all those things to make a decision and help your forecasting. I think right now there are still people doing that decision making, but machine learning has helped really synthesizing that really quickly. That would be nearly impossible to do in Excel.
So we've actually spent quite a bit of time and money and resources. We actually have built out a predictive tool on the multifamily. So very different use cases, again, between multifamily and retail. And I could talk a little bit about what we've built on the retail side, but on the multifamily side, we do have a predictive tool that's basically, we think it's much more granular than some of the more mainstream things like a CoStar, where they're looking at entire submarkets. We can get down to the zip code level or the census block level. And we have built out our own rent projection models using a variety of third-party data sets, as well as obviously what we can within our existing portfolio, recognizing, of course, that our 10,000 units is often not statistically relevant enough, but weaving those in. And then Eugene our data scientist is spending a lot of time not only sort of building those models and backtesting them, which, let's look at the last 4 years. It's been a roller coaster of rent growth. And so obviously it's been a tough training ground for the models, but also creating visualization tools. So then, when we're sitting in investment committee, we can kind of understand what it's telling us. But I think the really important thing to recognize is we don't think that we've created this magical tool that's predicting rent growth perfectly. Of course we don't think that. That's either incredibly naive or incredibly arrogant or some combination of the two. But what we're super interested in is where we have ultimate visibility into the projection tools that we've built. We know what the underlying data sets are. We're really focused on those being novel data sets. And then we understand, or at least Eugene does, the math that's going into those projections. And we really focus on areas where we see some of the more mainstream data sets where our projections are showing something that's notably different than the mainstream. And then we're spending a lot of time studying why that is, right? And to your point, it's certainly not supplementing, it's not a rubber stamp at investment committee, but then we rely on our boots on the ground market knowledge, our relationships, et cetera, to say, does that check out? Do we really believe that? And when it does, we lean in hard on those theses because you have a little bit of a contrarian view there. So I think it's a yes and yes. You have to have the relationships and the sort of gut that I know you were sort of joking about, but is still kind of real in real estate. But I think with really effective and novel screening tools, you can hone in a lot more efficiently.
So like AI, it's more of an augmentation versus a replacement sort of thing.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it's a tool, right? It's not the tool that's gonna, be the end all be all. I mean, from our perspective, again, we're ingesting so much information. We see the tool really helping us just make that process faster for our clients. I mean, we have the implementation time down to a science, but I mean, we think it'll help in terms of the predictive analytics. We really drive our roadmap based on client feedback. So we're really trying to be smart about what we're doing there and put some thought, time, and effort. I feel like the AI thing is in its infancy right now, at least in this industry in some ways, and we're just trying to be mindful of that and make sure, whatever we're doing, our clients actually want to do and want to see.
So shifting gears a little bit, Haley, you've been mentioning Eugene a lot, your data scientist. So we're not fortunate enough to have our own data scientists, but I do want to explore how you are all structured and kind of what roles are required to have an effective data practice.
You want me to start?
You may as well.
So again, we're a much smaller company. So all of our data analytics report through me in asset management, which is, I don't know that we went in with that as the plan. It just sort of happened organically, but it actually does play well, right? Because the asset managers really understand the existing portfolio better than any other function within the organization. We run, as I said, asset management runs the divestment strategy. So sort of from the day that we buy it through the day that we no longer own it, it sits within that group. And then asset management actually signs off on all of our underwritings on the acquisition side. And so de facto, there's a ton of flow of information that goes that way to help inform the deal teams as well. And so I think that's sort of how it ended up here. But so it's sort of broken into, I would say, like kind of two different realms. One is what I would consider like BI, like just the existing portfolio, on as granular as you can want to go, all the way up to portfolio level analytics. And then there's more of the predictive tools, which is much more, and that's separate. So that's Eugene, and he has some other resources that assist him. And they overlap, of course, because we want the sort of the business intelligence of the existing portfolio and sort of the day-to-day decision-making to help inform what we're trying to build on the predictive side and vice versa. But they are different functions, and I think that's, again, something that I hear people get tripped up is like they're kind of wanting to solve all of their problems in asset management and all of their goals on sort of innovative uses of data in one role or one group, and they can call it research or whatever they want to call it. Like, you kind of need to, again, think about who's the primary user of the data. And so, like, in the case of a lot of the work that Eugene's doing on the data science side, the predictive tools, it's the deal teams and investment committee that's ultimately, because it's informing our bigger picture strategy versus the business intelligence and business analytics is much more of like the operating group and the asset management group. And so we separate the two of them.
Do you have data engineers as well?
What's that?
Do you have data engineers as well to kind of facilitate the actual exposing of the data?
No.
So maybe I can add something. So Ivanhoé Cambridge is a slightly larger company, and I can't speak to all the depth of the groups that run the technology and data science side, but what I can speak to is the importance, and you highlighted it, it's a connective tissue between the real estate folks that are knowing the assets and knowing the business and knowing the market to that team that's really focusing on finding and creating value and making connections that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And I've seen situations over my career where if it's too disjointed, it's amazing work, but it's not, you can't apply it. And the whole point of this is really to find stuff that really could help drive your business, give you insights, answer questions. So I think the two really have to work hand in hand. And more times than not, it's having your business investment team really embrace this new way of thinking and challenge themselves to think about what value they can unlock with leveraging team and data and not doing it the old way, again, through Excel and Argus.
All right, I have one more question for the three of you, and then I'll open it up to the audience. Are there future trends in data or use cases that you are really excited about and are looking forward to?
I'll go real quick. I think it's going to be interesting to see if operating companies and platforms have an M&A run because of the underlying information that they're sitting on from real estate perspective. So investments in operating platforms so you can actually mine and leverage the information underneath it. It's not there yet, but I think it's at least a discussion in the boardroom about it.
Max, okay, go ahead, Haley.
In a similar vein, something that we've continued to find, like, vein of sort of non-traditional things informing our business is like, we find some of the most interesting data sets that we're using to help build some of the tools as things that are completely not real estate focused data sets at all, or aren't intended to be, and again, aren't necessarily just the cell phone tracking data or whatever that's sort of been a little bit more adopted in our business in the most recent years, but like old school, like logistics companies or whatever it might be, but they sit on really, really valuable data. And real estate is a somewhat unique investment class. And so while maybe some of, the hedge fund space or the PE space has found ways to utilize that data and monetize that data as an industry, we haven't done a super great job of that. And we're finding some really interesting use cases with some of those legacy like operating companies that we think can really inform our business differently.
I'd say, breaking down the barriers again to, not just having to sit in multiple systems. We've had a lot of great conversations with a lot of, market analytics companies and being able to pull in more information. The barriers to do this for many years was very difficult. There's a lot of major players, whether it be in the underwriting space, and, I won't name any names, but essentially being able to tie everything together and have some sort of cohesion finally in this industry is great. I think it's going to ultimately make everyone's job easier, but it's taken some time to get there and get everyone comfortable and understanding that, we need to work together somehow.
All right. Thank you very much.